Well, a very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where in the world you're tuning in from. My name is Adrian Reed, and a very warm welcome to this BA Community webinar. I'm very pleased to say that we have Marian Way with us today, who's going to talk about a topic that's, I'm sure, dear to many of our hearts, but he's going to talk about it from an angle that perhaps we might not have come across before. If you've ever wondered what clean language is, particularly if you've never heard the term before, then this will be a session that I'm sure you'll find informative and enjoyable. So before we get started, just a little bit about Marian. I've known Marian for a number of years. In fact, I think we met at Toastmasters, didn't we, Marian?
We did,
of
yes.
all places, but and got talking about this topic that I knew nothing about, and then I subsequently went on a training course with Marian that I thoroughly enjoyed. But Marian is an internationally recognised expert and trainer in clean language, the author or co-author of 3 books on the subject, Clean Approaches for Coaches, Insights in Space, and So You Want to Be Drama Free. Marian runs her own company and is very, very enthusiastic about this topic and very knowledgeable and an international authority on it. So with a presentation entitled From Conflict to Collaboration with Clean Language, Marian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. What I'm going to do is start sharing my screen so that you can all see what's happening. So let's just start with an agenda, shall we? So we're going to be talking in terms of drama and what drama is, how to detect it, how to know who is in which drama role, what brain states people get into when they're in drama, and we'll be exploring some current dramas. Hopefully you'll join in. I'd like this to be a little bit interactive if it can. And we'll be asking the question, when you're in drama, you're like what? And that's kind of setting the scene for what drama is, how it works, and what you're like when you're in drama. These things that we're talking about with drama, you'll be able to think about your own context and, of course, think about the context of the people that you work with. From then on, I'm going to introduce the clean language tools, starting with clean questions. And then we have something called evidence-based feedback, clean feedback. We'll be asking, what would you like to have happen? Talking about a way of avoiding drama in the first place, which is called a clean setup. Then something called a reality check. And then an action slide, and then what would you like to have happen next? So, first of all, let me just think. What is drama in this context? And what we're talking about is any time you're not getting what you want. So the question really is, how do you respond when you're not getting what you want? Now, when I first heard about drama, in this realm that I work in, I thought, well, that doesn't happen to me. I'm not a kind of person that gets into drama. And that's because I was thinking of television dramas where everything's kind of loud and shouty and people give one another a hard time. And I thought, well, that's not really me. But then I thought back about when I had a full-time job. And I wasn't really the kind of person who would work 9 to 5. I worked at home, and I quite often got up early, started work, worked a very long day before kind of a short evening and then bed. And some of the reason I was doing that work was because I was kind of like the only one who could do some of the jobs that I did. And I was also noticing when other people weren't getting to do the jobs that they were doing very well. And I'd say, oh, let me help you with that. Let me take that one over. And so I always had tons and tons of work. And quite often I would think, why is it always me that's always having to work late, miss out on outings and things that other people did because I was always working so hard? And then every so often I'd get really angry and I'd go in and I'd say to my boss, you know, I really would like to resign. And she'd say, you don't mean that. You don't mean that. And I kind of went round and round this cycle of being unhappy at work, but not really doing anything about it. So this is a little invitation now, and I don't know if can I see the chat?
So I'm not sure if you can see it. I can definitely see it this
okay.
end.
All right. So the question is, what are some of your dramas? Some dramas that you have had in the past that maybe got you into a bit of a bit angry or a bit upset, a bit drama-y. And if you can think of something that happened in your past, then you can write that in the chat, and perhaps Adrian can relay them to me.
I definitely can. So if you have a drama, do type it in the Q&A. And just to be clear, it will be anonymous. So I won't, even if your name comes up, I won't read out your name. So you can be as honest as you can be. It's really interesting, Marian, as you were talking about drama there, I was thinking, and you can maybe correct me if I've misinterpreted this, but I'm thinking about, as a business analyst, I can see different spheres of drama in my life without wanting to be too personal. I can see spheres in my professional world. I can see spheres in my or drama in my professional life. I can see drama in my personal life sometimes, and relationships with family and friends and others, as sometimes happens, and also drama in the wider world as well. Disagreement with people on politics and those sorts of things.
There's massive drama in the world, isn't there? Yeah, I mean, not just with politics, but the way that the whole world is going these days, and there's people with their climate change and other people who don't even believe that there's even such a thing. And that's causing lots of conflict, isn't it, in the world? So it can be at any scale, really, a drama.
And I guess all of those scales play into each other, because if I think about times when I've been experiencing what for me felt like very, very difficult drama in the workplace, it's really hard to not bring some of that home.
Absolutely.
Which then creates. So we've got we've got some comments coming through. The first one is feeling like I have to do all the work, earning money for the business without being recognised for it. Oh, that's a juicy drama.
Yeah, that's where I was in my drama in the past. Luckily, I'm not doing that anymore, but that definitely was happening to me.
Yeah.
Have you got any more?
So we've also got just generally feeling overworked and underappreciated. So that seems to be a sort of
theme.
Oh, not feeling recognition for the role. So perhaps. And another one's coming out. I was expecting a promotion, but it didn't happen. Oh, I think we've all been there. That's hard to take, isn't it?
As well. Very hard. So with these dramas, we were using our clean language skills, which we'll come on to a little bit later, and we were working in a school. And in this school, there was a lot of drama, and we hadn't really coded it as drama at the time. We were just noticing that there was lots of problems and people unhappy and saying, oh, the head's never going to get anything sorted out, and people coming in and just lots of mayhem. And somebody we knew, a guy called Michael Mallows, introduced us to this model, which is this Cartman drama triangle that some of you may have come across. And there are 3 roles in this triangle. First of all, you've got the persecutor. So the persecutor is very pointy fingery, and they'll say things like, she's absolutely useless, they're doing it deliberately, you're doing it all wrong, you should have known better. Mm-hmm. Then you've got a victim. Nothing ever changes, I can't do what I want, no one appreciates me, I've tried but it's no use, he won't do such and such, so I can't do my part. And that has a bit of a to it. And then you've got the rescuer, who's kind of comes in on a horse and rescues everyone. I'm the one who always has to. Don't worry, I'll do that for you. Can I just suggest? They can't manage, so I have to. I can't say no. So in my story, in this job that I had, first of all, later on when I had this model, I could see that I was being a rescuer.
Yes.
So if somebody wasn't able to do their work, I would say, don't worry, I'll do that for you. Let me pick that up. I'll do that. I was always taking bits of work of other people, which was one of the reasons I had so much to do. And then when it all became too much and I was overwhelmed and underpaid, then it was all poor me, no one appreciates me, I can never go to the outings that other people go on, I'm always working late, it's terrible, I'm always tired. And then I would go into my boss and give her a hard time, and I would say, you know, this company is absolutely useless, they don't take care of their employees, blah, 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 blah. So I was going round and round and round and round on this drama triangle.
Mm.
So that's familiar to you as well, Adrian?
It really is. I mean, and again, I may be misunderstanding or misapplying this, but I'm thinking of times when perhaps I've tried to be a rescuer to somebody who is firmly in a victim situation. So they've perceived my rescue as persecution.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell me what to do.
yeah. Oh, actually, we've got more people typing their dramas in, so I'll just read a few from that. So we've got politics where executives are not being honest, which has resulted in the team feeling very unhappy and unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's hard drama. Senior people taking over the analysis because it's too important for you. Then screwing it up anyway because they don't do it very often. Then they disappear.
Nice rescuer. Yeah.
Then they disappear, and I'm left to discreetly fix it. Now that's another thing that I think will probably resonate with many BAs. Is quite often, in my experience at least BAs don't hog the limelight. They quietly fix things in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Which perhaps again maybe there's some sort of alignment with that rescuer type.
Yeah,
mindset.
And then, you know, with the rescuer, if you continue doing rescuer, then the thing that happens to you is what happened to me is you get exhausted, and then you turn yourself into the victim. Yeah. So with this triangle, you know, I'm talking about me going around that, but if there's a few people, then, or one or even two people, then this can be a little dance that you play around this triangle where somebody's the persecutor giving the victim a hard time, and then they feel bad about doing the persecuting, so then they rescue it, and it just goes on and on and on. In my family, when I was a child, my mother used to give us all a hard time when we did something naughty, and my dad used to she used to call on him to persecute us by giving us a hard time as well. And then he would try to rescue the situation by telling us in advance what to do to keep her happy. And we went round and round that when in my childhood all the time. We were on one of those roles or another.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd give my mother a hard time.
I'm looking at this thinking it's got so many applications at so many levels. It's just really interesting, Marian.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the drama triangle. And then I thought we'd have a quick look at the costs of drama. So if people would like to write in the chat, what are the costs of drama? I've thought of a few, but it'd be good to hear what the actual costs are in the dramas that you're talking about. For example, you know, a cost to me in my drama going round and round that triangle was exhaustion. I was completely exhausted a lot of the time. And the truth is, it never ever occurred to me to try and sort it out. You know, it's like this is my final solution was to leave the company, because I was always in drama. So I didn't actually try ever to sort it out. I didn't have any tools, and I was always exhausted.
That resonates with me a lot. I can think about a time when I was I was doing a lot of international travel with the company that I was working with on a major project, and I was in one of probably the most vibrant European cities that you can think of, and I saw none of it. And I was literally sort of commuting there for about 18 months. And I remember one evening being up at about 11, still answering queries that some exec had sent through, and you just have this, why am I doing this moment? And it's funny because I did have a bit of a why am I doing this moment, which led to some other decisions which were ultimately positive, but which did ultimately, I mean, I did leave, you know, so it's interesting. So we've got some ideas coming through on the costs of drama. So one person says the best employees leave. So and we've talked that happened to both of us. We both left. Using my energies for the wrong actions and then ending up not prepared to join in projects that could have been really good. So I guess focusing on the busy work rather than the work that matters. We have drama between the business analyst and architect. Architect can do BA's job better than BA. Architect does the stay in your own lane thing and shuts BA out. So role ambiguity, different people, like land grab, political land grab happening.
Yeah.
So everyone focusing on the land grab rather than actually getting the job done.
Yeah, so wasted time, wasted money. And I think, if you're always in drama, then there's also a lack of a real connection, because if you're always complaining about everyone, then you're not actually connecting with them and getting sort of the creativity going or whatever is needed.
That's it. A couple more have come through. Some like negative culture. So actually, and I sort of, you know what it's like if you're in an organisation where it seems like everyone is very negative. That's quite a hard place to be in.
Yeah.
And then cost of drama, project teams less engaged, don't explore solutions, deliver less effective solutions to the business. So yeah, we're so focused on the drama, we deliver something that's less good. And then drama can lead to negative behaviour, then behaviour breeds behaviour, and many are dragged down, which I think is another excellent point.
Absolutely. And another thing that happens is that we get into these different brain states. So this is a little model created years and years ago by Paul McLean, and it's not current neuroscience or anything like that. We use it as a metaphor for what's going on and a simple way to explain to people. So you've got your reptilian brain at the base of your spine, and that's the part that deals with all the sort of bodily functions like temperature and making sure that you're not too hungry, too thirsty, you've got enough light or dark or whatever you need. Plus it's the part that will get you to run away, fight back or freeze if something bad happens. But of course, the things that are happening to us nowadays at work, they're not the same kind of things that were happening in prehistoric times when people had to run away from dinosaurs or whatever it was they were doing. I don't know if people and dinosaurs were on the planet at the same time, but anyway, there was sort of massive danger, and then you had to go into one of these brain states to survive. We're not really often in massive danger. Sometimes we are, but we're going into these brain states because other people are get aggressive with us or something's happening, and the chemicals start to go around our body that make us want to fight back, run away or freeze. There's another one, which is the mammalian brain, which kind of came next, which is who sets the rules around here? And a lot of dramas are about the rules and people's values and beliefs. And that kind of happens in this mammalian brain. And only when those two are settled and you're not in drama, can you be really in a good state for learning, creativity, working, collaboration, and so on. So another cost of drama is that it gets these unhealthy chemicals racing around our body. And if we can't calm it down, then that can cause, stress, ill health, and all kinds of problems for us as people that we're storing up in the future.
And it can be a bit like a feedback loop, a reinforcing feedback loop sometimes, can't it? Or certainly I've found it can be that when stress happens, so, let's take an example. If I'm very stressed, so I'm short with people, or if you're short with people, they tend to be quite short with you back.
Yeah.
Which means that that then, well, for me at least, incites more stress. So it's like, you could see a feedback loop that reinforces either until something changes or until burnout, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of looking at it, and a business analyst way of looking at it.
Yes, a very BA way.
Yeah, I saw your little book on the shelf there about system thinking.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. That's an original 1981 copy of that book. I'll have you know.
Wow. So that's some of the costs. But we were talking about this one day, and somebody said, well, there's benefits as well. So see if you can think, what are some of the benefits of drama? It's that at first sight you think, well, there aren't any, but we've thought of quite a lot of benefits of drama. I don't know if you can think of any, Adrian.
Yeah, so again, we'll invite people to type in any advantages of drama. And one thing I'm thinking, Marian, is, so if I think about when I've been in high trust relationships, as in people I've worked with before, and we've been collaborating on something, actually we've sometimes needed a bit of drama to stop us going the route we always go down. So we've sort of reverted to type, but somebody's done something different, which has been perhaps a little bit uncomfortable in the short term, but it's been for the better of the group. But it creates drama because it's different. Even that might be an approach. It might be it might be something small, like, how we not quite this small, but how we run the meeting or something. So that's
so some kind of challenge comes in.
Yeah.
And then it creates short-term drama but long-term benefit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got some coming in as well. Advantages of drama: shakes someone out of complacence and gets attention.
Yeah, definitely gets attention.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that we've got is that if you're in one of those drama roles, you don't have to take action. You can carry on wallowing in self-pity, or carry on helping everyone out, or carry on giving everyone a hard time, and nothing needs to change. You don't have to take responsibility if you continue in your drama position.
Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? I've come across a term, you may well, I'm sure you have as well, this idea of learned helplessness.
Yes.
And it's interesting the extent that seems to exist in some organisations, where people are in a situation they don't like, but can't seem to, for whatever reason, get beyond it. And sometimes that's structural, and sometimes the people are constrained. But this is a crazy example, but I was working for an organisation that shall remain nameless in Southampton, and they had 2 buildings, and they were moving out of one of the buildings, and I needed to go and collect some stuff. For some reason, my swipe card still worked, and the floor was empty. It was like, when an office is just full of old chairs and stuff, so it was just full of all the old junk.
Yeah.
But my card still worked to get me in there, and there was what used to be a meeting room in the corner. And because I needed to do some focused work, I needed to do some writing up, and there were never any meeting rooms, I just moved in there for about 2 weeks. And I was having meetings with stakeholders who were like jokingly calling it, "Oh, we'll have the meeting in your office." I shouldn't really be admitting any of this. I could probably get into quite a lot of trouble. But we were in an environment where it was just like everything was focusing on getting the job done, and no one really cared. It was more creative, but yeah.
Okay, and the other thing about drama, of course, is it can be exciting. It's like stuff happening at work, and you can go home, tell your partner all about it, and it's like you've got something to talk about. If you've got a lot of drama going on, there's always something interesting to share with all your friends and people at home. So there are some benefits to drama, but on the whole, it's not a position most of us want to be in or want to be dealing with certainly on a day-to-day basis.
That's true. A couple of other good examples have come in, Marian. So at least drama often means issues get out in the open, so have a better chance of being addressed.
Yeah.
And it could be a good lesson learned with regards to how we react. So if we're reflexive and reflective, that could be an opportunity for learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I had a big drama in the summer. I was doing a presentation that went a bit wrong, and between 2 of us doing it together, we got ourselves into a bit of a drama, and we've learned a lot about how to co-present from having had that drama. So there are definitely some benefits in terms of what you can learn afterwards. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got this slide about current dramas, but I think quite a lot of the dramas that were already mentioned are already current dramas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, if anyone's got any more, they can certainly type them in and we'll read them out. But Adrian, have you got a current drama that you can think about?
Oh, I've got multiple dramas all the time, Marian. I think we all have, really, haven't we?
Multiple dramas. So let's skip that for now and just go, so when you're in drama then, you're like what?
So
what do you like?
It's interesting because there's the what I think I'm like and what I know I probably am like, which are 2 different things. And I think I am reflective. So, for example, I will, unless it's something very severe, I tend to take quite a long time to reply. So I pause But this is a learned response,
Okay.
because I, in my younger years, was perhaps a bit fiery and too quick to respond, which is not, for me, a good trait. So I
Right.
would say I'm slow when I'm in drama.
You're slow. So in younger years, you were fiery. Were you more likely to take the persecutor stance?
I think in my younger years, I was more likely to take the victim stance, actually.
Okay. So you're more likely to take the victim. And now you're reflective and slow.
Reflective and slow, and aspire to be more cool-headed and calculated, but not calculated has a negative connotation. I don't mean that. I mean, like I'm the sort of person that I don't think, I mean, you'd have to ask people who work with me, but I don't think I fly off the handle very often. But that doesn't mean that sometimes I will have an emotive response to things that are important. So for me, I think people, again, I'd have to ask people that work with me, but I think people know that there are certain, like if I get very animated about something, people tend to listen, because I don't get very animated that often in that sense. So it's almost like cool, slow, but then
now they get animated.
Yeah, but then they get animated. But animated for like the 5% that really matters. And for the noise, the noise, I just try and let it wash all over me.
So noise wash all over you, and cool and slow, and animated for the 5%. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just introduce you to these clean language and clean questions. So clean questions were created by a guy called David Grove, who was a Maori working in America and the UK. And his idea was that if you're asking people questions, usually you're asking them to find out information for yourself, and we're sort of half listening, waiting for the answer to go off and do something with the answer. Whereas he was like, what would it be like if you asked questions of somebody that helped them get more information for themselves, that were completely respectful, and you got the information at the same time? And so he took kind of ordinary questions and looked at the assumptions in them and how you could take out some of those assumptions in order to develop your own or someone else's ideas. And so if we just look at what you've just said, for example, you say you're cool-headed. So I can ask you questions about that, like what kind of cool-headed is that?
Well, it's interesting actually, because although I call it cool-headed, that's not for me where the emotion is at all. So for me, when I say cool-headed, ironically now, and I've never thought about this until you just asked it, but although I say cool-headed, for me the emotion is here. But cool-headed is about not immediately feeling and responding to that. It's taking a moment out to say, okay, I feel that. I have a choice on whether or how to respond. That for me is what I mean by cool-headed.
So cool-headed is there's an emotion here, and then it's taking a moment out to think about how you're going to respond. Yeah.
For me, yeah.
Okay. And let me ask you one more question. So when you're animated, then what happens?
Oh gosh, this is dangerous to admit on a webinar. So when it's with people I know and work with well, I mean, I don't like to use the word diva, but I think people might use that word sometimes. But I use elements of animation and humour to underline a point that's very important to me. So it's about communicating it in a way and emphasising that this isn't the 95%, this is the 5%, and this is why I think it is.
So you're not going to say diva, but you did.
I know, by not saying it, I still said it.
Great. So you can already, I'm sure, see the power of these questions, because it gets people to really think about what they've just said. Because one of the things that you're doing with the questions is using the same words. So I've picked up your words, cool-headed and animated, and then the clean part says, let's not change those words or paraphrase them. Let's just ask a question about that and see what we find out. And then you get that information and I do.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking about this in a business analysis context, and a lot or part of what we do is we'll elicit information about a problem or an organizational situation or some sort of problematical situation. And one thing as I'm sure many other BAs are really conscious of, is it's really hard to not put your own lens on that. If you come in as a facilitator, as a practitioner, and it's very easy to ask a question inadvertently in a way that leads the witness, so to speak. Whereas these clean questions are, I guess, by their nature, much cleaner.
Yeah. And talking back about your own response to the idea of cool-headed, when you said you have the emotion here and then there's a pause, one of the things, this is what clean questions are great for. They're great for, instead of kicking off or, just exploding in the moment because something's happened, you can take a moment and you can get curious instead. So this is the first sort of drama-free or conflict resolution tool, is to, instead of go straight into your drama response, is to take a pause and think, well, maybe what they're saying makes sense to them. I could ask them a couple of questions before I say what I think, because I just might have got hold of the wrong end of the stick. So these are great questions to put in that pause between the reaction, the sort of automatic reaction in your body, and what actually comes out of your mouth. This is tool number 1, clean questions. So another tool that we have in the clean language kind of group of tools is something called clean feedback. So all of clean language is about separating. So with the clean questions that I just showed you, it's about separating out your own things from what belongs to the other person. So using their words instead of your own words, and asking them questions instead of making up what you think they're saying. And the clean feedback just takes that from a slightly different angle, which says, let's have a look at the evidence, what actually happened. Let's think about what we're assuming and think about the impact. And then maybe we can form that into some kind of sentence that makes a good feedback for somebody. So if we just think about, if you think about me and my job, in years gone by, so what have I actually seen or heard that let me know that if we take, I was upset because I was working too many hours, I can say, well, I started work at 8 o'clock. I quite often finished at 8 or 9 o'clock. So that was true. But what I was assuming was that was what the company required. I wasn't taking any responsibility for the fact that I work at home, I could work whichever hours I wished, and that I was rescuing people right, left and centre. I was making a big assumption that this was a big bad company that was putting this all onto me. And the impact I've already mentioned was I was exhausted. Now, if I'd have really thought about that in those days, I could have worked out that I was making huge inferences about what the company expected from me. And then maybe I could have tackled it from a different angle. So this is something that you can do with yourself. You can say, let me just think about my drama. What am I assuming? And I have found it really useful, again, in that pause. If somebody sends me an email and I think, that's not on, I have a little look at the words in their email and I think, which bit of those words is making me have this response? I work out what I'm assuming, and then I can write them an email back that says, when you say so-and-so, I'm imagining you mean such and such, and it made me think this, and so can we ever talk about that? So I can pick up the phone and tell them that, rather than just acting out of my initial response. So this is a fantastic tool for sorting dramas out.
And avoiding that reptilian response.
Yeah, and avoiding the reptilian response, or having a minor reptilian response and then sort of knocking it on the head. And when we teach people this model in teams, along with those clean questions, this has huge potential for sorting out dramas when people start to trust one another enough that they can say what their inferences are. And then dramas can start to get sorted out. And we do a lot of work in teams where we find out what people are assuming, and people go, oh, I didn't think you were, didn't think it was like that. And so they can unpick the drama and put it to bed. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, and I don't know whether you've already got tools like that in your business analyst world, or this is something new.
I've not seen it as explicit as this. I've seen models around this sort of area, but not as sort of neat and as clean as this.
Yeah, so we have, evidence, inference and impact. And then if we're giving a full piece of feedback, you probably know about the feedback sandwich, but we tend to say something that's worked well, and then do the evidence, inference and impact, something that hasn't worked so well, and then what would work better. And that's our model for feedback.
Like a retrospective review.
Yeah, like a retrospective. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. The next tool is the question, what would you like to have happen? And I'll put the word instead. So this is happening. What would you like to have happen instead? And along with that, you can use some of the other clean questions that were up on the board before. So if you'd have asked me, for example, in my previous existence, I might have said, well, I'd rather be working a reasonable number of hours. And then you could say to me, so what kind of reasonable is that? And I might say, well, I'm still happy to work, 9 o'clock till 6 or 7, but that's better than what I am doing. The where question probably isn't going to work, but it may be that I might have said, actually, I'll come into the office, because then my day would be much more segmented into work and home. And then I could have said, perhaps, if there's anything else about this, it would be good to know what's going to happen to all the other pieces of work that I do that don't fit in the day. And then maybe that's like, what question? That's a question to elicit a metaphor. And I would have said, well, actually, that will be like belonging properly to the group instead of always too busy to take part in things.
I think this is a particularly powerful question for us as BAs, because often or in my experience at least, often stakeholders talk in the language of problems. Well, actually, they initially talk in the language of solutions, but very specific things that they want. And then we have to understand what their underlying problems are. But this is a question I genuinely do ask in my practice, which is, what would you like to have happen? Okay, so this is the problem you're telling me about, but what would you want, because, and it sounds daft, but, I mean, random top level thing off the top of my head, but I don't know, customers are, the customer retention is dropping in a particular segment. Okay, it's very easy for us to assume that they want it to increase, but sometimes they just want it to stay stable. And it's only when we ask we find those things out.
Yeah. So this is a great question to ask when somebody's talking about a problem, because it starts to turn their thinking into outcomes instead.
Exactly.
We actually have another whole model which I haven't included in here, which is called the PRO model, which helps you get from a problem to an outcome via, sometimes people say they'd like to not have.
Yes.
Like to not have all these, I don't know what they might say, all these extra tasks to do.
Yeah.
So they talk about what they like to get rid of or stop doing, and then you can say, so when you stop doing that, then what happens?
Yeah.
That's a way of getting them to have a clear desired outcome.
Fantastic. Useful.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is the one that we have that stops drama before it starts. And if I had done this with my colleague when we were presenting together in the summer, then we would never have had a drama. But we failed to use our own tool. We had got too busy, and it was all last minute. But if we had done this, we probably wouldn't have got into the drama. So this has also got 3 questions. And the questions are phrased to elicit a metaphor, but it doesn't really matter how people answer them. So the first one is for, and then you put your own word where the dots are. So that might be this event today, this meeting, this project, whatever. If you're at home, you can use it at home for this holiday or this Christmas period or whatever. For that to go just the way you'd like, it will be like what? And then you can ask the other clean questions that are on the clean questions slide of the answer. So if somebody says, for this project to go just the way I'd like, it will be revolutionary. So you can say, what kind of revolutionary? Is there anything else about revolutionary? And so on. You can expand the answers. Once you've done that, then, and you do that with 2 people or on your own, or you can do that with a whole group. I do a lot of work with groups, and we just go around the whole group saying how, and everybody says how they would like the meeting to go or the event to go. Once you've done that, then it's you'd like to be like what? And basically what we're saying is for it to go like you'd like to be like what? And that gives everyone a chance to think about their own state and how they would like to be. And it also starts to give responsibility away from the people who are running the thing to everyone in the room. And I know somebody who works in a big company who has taken this on and uses it at the beginning of every single meeting. And it's revolutionized the way that they work in that company. And the third one is what support or resources do you need? So it's like the event, yourself, and support and resources. And that might be environmental, it might be from the other members of the group, it might be from whoever's running the event. It's a great model for bringing out hidden agendas or finding out what is on everyone's mind before you begin. And it's very flexible. You can condense it and say, let's have 1-word answers today, or you can make it a big, long, drawn-out thing. If you're starting a big project, you can use this as part of the scoping.
Fantastic.
A great tool for stopping drama before it starts. Okay, sometimes when you ask people what they want, whether it's in the clean setup or what they would like to have happen, they ask for things that aren't possible. So here's a little reality check. Can you have what you want? If not, now what would you like to have happen? Because, you know, sometimes people say all sorts of things like, I'd like my boss to leave.
Yes.
Is that likely to happen? No. So given that your boss is not going to leave, now what would you like to have happen? Something like that is another little tool.
That's interesting. I can imagine that being very useful in innovation as well, because actually sometimes, you know, the very specific thing that's being requested can't be achieved. But if we get down to the essence of what the person's actually asking for, there might be a very different way of delivering that essence.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a specific example right now. I mean, I guess it's like, you know, I don't know, I want an MP3 player, but there's some constraint which means I can't have one. But what I really want is music on demand. So actually a mobile phone with a streaming media might be, or a record player or whatever. So getting down to the essence of what the person's really wanting and needing.
Yeah. And last night I was working with somebody, it's not a work example, but she was saying, I need to be well rested in order to do good work. And if I'm not well rested, then I kind of tinker around, if you know what I mean. It's like play a game on the computer or something. And in order to do good work, she needed to be well rested. And in order to be well rested, she needed to have felt that she's done good work. And neither of these were happening. And so when she realised it was like that, that she couldn't get what she wanted, then what she realised was like she needed to separate them out and get rest and work completely separate, rather than sort of skiving off during work because she wasn't well rested, which is what was done.
Yeah.
Okay, and then once you've worked through all these things with a drama, because you take your drama, whatever it is, and you kind of run it through these tools. Some of them will work better for some dramas and some better for some others. But at the end of it, what you're hoping to come out with is some kind of action. So here's a bunch of action questions. What will you do now? What's a task you can set yourself? How will you know it's working? To just, and these questions aren't as clean as the others because they have got some assumptions in, but they're kind of clean enough for this context to
It's interesting. Someone's just typed something in which I think relates to the previous slide and that sort of reality check, which is, I think, another angle which I think some of the questions on that next slide relate to as well for us as BAs, particularly in an agile context where we talk about, well, there are different words for it in slightly different contexts, but like a minimum viable or a minimum valuable product. So actually, if we want to get something out the door quickly and understand what the minimum thing that we can, yes, okay, you want to have the gold plated one, but actually, given the constraint of getting something out to test it, what would you like to have happen? That's an interesting observation. I've not thought of that, but I think that's
minimal viable product. Yes,
yeah.
Great. I'm glad that you're coming up with lots of examples from the agile world, because tomorrow I have to go and do this thing with 60 agile coaches. So
fantastic.
It'll be interesting to see what they say as well. Okay, so we've got actions, and all of this put together is something that we call the clean change cycle. So we've got outcome, and with the outcome you've got the what would you like to have happen and or the clean setup. Then you can go and do some actions, and then you can get some feedback, or you can have an outcome and realize that you need to give some feedback and then take action and give it. So this can actually go both ways round, and sometimes that reality check comes in. So this is a little thing that we give out to lots of people so that they can learn these questions and take these tools on themselves to either stay out of drama or deal with drama as it comes up.
Fantastic. The comments just come in, which I think will be music to your ears, Marian, given what you've just said. I'll read the comment verbatim, which is, this is really helpful in agile projects / teams. So yes. There we go.
Yeah, we kind of know that because my business partner and I have started going to lots of agile events, and we find that the agile coaches really latch onto this in a big way. And a group that we worked with in Belgium, they said to us that actually if agile coaches all had these tools as a kind of base, then the whole agile coaching world would be kind of improved. So I mean, I don't really know enough about the agile world to know how that would work, but we've definitely had a lot of good feedback from agile coaches with these tools. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so if anybody would like to find out more, then here are a bunch of ways that you can do some more. So we have a journal which is called So You Want to Be Drama Free, and you can buy that and fill in your own answers to lots of different questions as well as the ones we've had here. So it's a big book. There's a drama-free study group that's starting online that you might be interested in. We have a clean language practice group which is online. I do public trainings in clean language, whether that's using it as a coaching tool or in groups. Some people might be interested in perhaps getting some clean coaching. And of course, we do interventions for teams and organisations. We've just had somebody who's on a course asking us to do that today, to go and work with a team that's in a big load of conflict. So that's our kind of speciality.
And if anyone who's listening in is sitting on the fence, I would say from personal experience, I know I attended an introductory session with you, Marian, and it was I found it extremely useful. So it's
I mean, I think your participants are all around the world, and so we do some online events. And if anyone's in the UK, we've got the same workshop that you attended is coming up in January.
Oh wow! Fantastic.
It's a one-day introduction to clean language.
Yeah.
These are the books that are available. So that's Drama Free, Clean Approaches for Coaches, and Insights in Space. They're the books that I've either written or contributed to. And then my business partner, Caitlin Walker, has written this one called From Contempt to Curiosity. And I have to say that she is the person who's developed a lot of these tools that we use mostly with groups. Mm. And so if you're interested in working with groups, that's the one to get.
And just to reflect, because I mean, like the clean approaches for coaches, as a BA, I might look at that and think, well, I'm not a coach. But funny enough, because I know I bought that after your session, and if I think about that in terms of not necessarily an individual, but a team or an organization, I think it's very it's like it's transferable outside of what might be
absolutely. Yes, I mean
traditional coaching.
it's a book about the work of David Grove and how clean language works. And the Contempt of Curiosity is a book about how to use clean language with groups. Insights in Space is another process called Clean Space, where people move around the room finding out different ideas and solutions. A very, very creative process. And the Drama Free is really what we've been talking about, but with a huge number more exercises and things to do.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And just the Acknowledgements, Clean Language created by David Grove, Clean Change by Caitlin Walker, Drama Triangle, Stephen Cartman, Triune Brain, Paul McLean, and the term Drama Free that we use a lot was coined by Svetlana Shapovalyansk, who's one of our colleagues in Russia. And that's it. Any questions?
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Marian, for such an interesting, I mean, it's amazing to cover so much and so much practical stuff in such a short amount of time.
You didn't know you were going to be a diva, did you?
Well, no, well, probably always, but to a certain extent. So there are some questions coming in, so please do type questions. We'll cover as many as we can in the time we have remaining. I'll just read out, there have been some additional comments that have come in.
I'm going to just stop sharing and then I can perhaps see, can I see them or not?
So the first comment, I'm not sure whether you've got them your side, but the first comment that's come in has said, I'm so surprised by this topic, wasn't expecting this. This is so relevant to agile teams especially. I would not normally take this stuff so seriously, but I find myself so surprised how relevant this is to IT and BA environments. Someone's asking whether the webinar will be a recorded so they can share it with their team. The answer is yes. The recording, all going well, fingers crossed, will be ready by about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Just need to do a bit of processing. So our next question, or our first question is, why do most organizations or teams try to avoid having conversations of the topic of conflict? So why do people avoid conflict and even the topic of conflict, Marian?
Well, I think we're scared. I think we're worried about what happens if, and you hear the expression "the can of worms." So people are sometimes very reluctant. We're working with a group at the moment. Well, Caitlin is working with a group who have been in conflict for years. And at the beginning of this, somebody has, got her in and said, we really need to sort this out. And one of the kind of main people in the group who some of this drama revolves around said that they wouldn't take part. They did not want their, it's become too ingrained, they're too upset, they didn't want it to come out. And it's taken a while to kind of bring her on side, get her where she's okay to even come to the meeting and gradually start to speak about things. It's not something that is necessarily going to be resolved overnight if it's been going on for years and years. So I think people haven't got the tools to deal with it. So they just continue doing the same old thing, whether it works or not. Yeah.
So a process of recognition for those involved over a period of time. So, okay, so a sort of follow-up question or a related question is, if you're experiencing drama in a team, what would be an easy first step to get to the clean language? And I'm guessing the angle that this is coming from is, if as a practitioner I've never used clean language before, if the person has never heard of clean language before, how could we approach it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because some of those questions can be a little bit odd if you're just a single person trying to apply this on your own, which is why we advocate, doing, excuse my dog, we advocate training a whole team at one go so that they've all got the tools and then they can all use them together and it becomes normal and it becomes what we do around here. So if there is only you and you've got these questions, then there are certain ones of those questions which are probably easier to ask than others. For example, what kind of? It's a very simple, normal English question, and you can just practice it at any time. So anytime anybody mentions anything, so, if you talk about being cool-headed, you can say, oh, what kind of cool-headed is that? And it doesn't sound too unusual. Or you can say, so when you're cool-headed, Adrian, then what happens? So that's another. So look at the questions and go, which ones of these sound ordinary? And then how can you just start practicing asking those questions? And the other thing to do, of course, is to be listening, because the key to it is that you're asking the questions of that person's actual words, and you can't do that unless you're really listening very carefully to what people are saying. So that's one thing. And I think another thing to do is to just take yourself away and ask yourself what you're inferring. What are your assumptions? And then you can check them out. You can say, I'm imagining, I'm assuming, I'm making up that the story I'm making up is this, and then you can just find out whether it's true or not. So those little steps can help you to kind of separate out what's actually happening from what you are making of it, which is where a lot of drama arises from, because it arises from misunderstanding between, the same people use the same language, but somebody interprets it one way and somebody interprets it a different way.
It's interesting, as you were saying that, Marian, I was thinking about, this probably isn't the most eloquent way of putting it, but the fact that we all perceive things through a lens, and that lens is based on our experience, our personal experience and our received wisdom, and we all carry a bit of baggage around with us. And so, like,
what kind of baggage is that, Adrian?
Well, no, but so to give you an example, I once did some work in a call center, a contact center, where I was observing that in my view, the culture was very toxic. And it was, in my view, the reward mechanisms or the measurement mechanisms were very blunt and were very were meaning that the people couldn't do their job properly because they were having to make so many calls or receive so many calls a day, or the middle managers were really lambasting them for not doing that. And I have to keep reminding myself now, whenever I go to another call center, that not every call center is like that one. But I've had to become conscious of it, because I had this almost, okay, well, I'm going to a call center. Well, they're going to be managing people in this way, and they're going to be having dashboards and doing that. And it's not always the case. There are some really, really well run ones. Yeah. But that it's almost like I know that's my baggage. So so I know that's part of my lens. So I can at least bring it into my peripheral vision. Yeah. Otherwise, you can go. Otherwise, I can go in there and ask all the wrong questions in inverted commas, because I've made a whole bunch of assumptions.
Absolutely. And if you listen to your language, toxic and blunt, they're quite drama-y words. Yeah. You're kind of going in there with a predisposition to drama. Yeah. And which may or may not happen. Absolutely.
Which creates, isn't I don't know if you've ever done this. I certainly have, where you prepare, or I prepared for a difficult conversation, and it doesn't happen. The person's reasonable, but I've almost prepared for it. So I'm almost ready to have the difficult conversation. I have to I'd completely misjudged what was going to happen. But
yes. Anyway, I run a lot of public trainings, and we quite often, on the first day, there'll be somebody who you think, oh my goodness, how on earth are we going to deal with that person? They're being awkward, or they're doing some behaviour that is really tricky. And spend a whole evening with my co-trainer going, what are we going to do, planning it out, thinking about which tools we're going to use to address this. And then they come in the morning and they say, I've realised I'm being so-and-so, and I've decided I'm going to do this.
Fantastic.
And of course, that might be because of the tools we've been teaching them, but it is quite interesting how sometimes you get ready for drama and it just isn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do a little exercise when we introduce these tools. Just a really simple exercise where we get people to see an elephant, and we say, see an elephant to everybody in the room. And people say, oh, I've got an African elephant, somebody else, I've got an Indian elephant, it's all covered in beautiful bright colours, and somebody else will say it's a baby elephant and a cartoon elephant. And it becomes really clear how even just one word, elephant, people are making up all sorts of stuff about an elephant, just instantly, just like that. And that if you think about our language and how we're doing that all of the time, every word that we say, people are making stuff up about. It's absolutely amazing that we actually communicate at all. And it's not at all surprising that we get into drama.
Absolutely.
Because of that. Yeah.
Any way of making mental models explicit has to be a good thing.
Absolutely.
So fantastic. Well, I'm sure we could carry on, Marian, all evening, but time.
We've got a couple more questions there, I see.
Have we? We'll have to pause it there, I'm afraid, Marian, because we have reached our time. But if people want to continue asking you questions, or if there are questions that people haven't had answered, is there a way people can contact you?
Absolutely. If I just put my little slide back on. So there we go. So that's our website is cleanlearning.co.uk. My email is marian@cleanlearning.co.uk, and that's my LinkedIn. It's just Marian Way on LinkedIn. And it'd be lovely to meet people on LinkedIn and carry on these conversations. That'd be great.
Definitely. And you mentioned lots of resources that people can take a look at as well if they're interested in these topics. So, Marian, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy diary to present to us this evening. It's been a fascinating topic, and we've had so many people in the chat saying it's relevant for them.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, even though on the face of it doesn't, it looks very different. There's that sort of dovetailing in of these things. So thank you very much. Also, a massive thank you to everyone who has tuned in live, or if you're watching the recording, thank you for taking part. As a reminder, these monthly BA community webinars really are about getting topics onto our radars as BA practitioners that we might not otherwise hear about. So there are plenty of webinars out there about how to write a better use case or whatever, and it's not to say that's not important, it totally is, but actually these topics tend to be a little bit broader and a little bit different. So with that in mind, you will get a short survey after this session. Only 2 or 3 questions, but one of the questions is, what topics would you like to have covered? And I would really appreciate it if you could just fill in your ideas, because we'll try and make as many of your ideas happen as possible. So we do have another webinar coming up in December, which is around how diversity and inclusion can be useful in testing and business analysis. So do take a look at that one. If you're attending live, when you close the webinar down, you'll get a link to register. As with all of these webinars, they are limited. We're limited to 100 spots. So if you click now, you'll very likely get one, whereas they might fill up a little bit later. But other than that, do stay in touch. Thanks again, Marian, for taking time out, and hope to catch up with everyone soon.
Thanks everyone for all your contributions as well. Thank you.
Definitely. Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Bye then.